I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. A riot is the language of the unheard.
There are some people who love to pretend that there are no problems with policing and courts and everything else, and there's some people who make it about race and say that it's just Black Lives Matter and Antifa and other groups who are complaining about this. Well, unfortunately for that point, I'm not going to begin this video with an example of a black person. Instead, I'm going to use an old white woman. This woman's name is Brenda Bryant. She's a fugitive. You see, Brenda Bryant is a target of retaliation from the state of South Carolina through systemic targeting that made her a criminal somehow. And it's all because she won a Supreme Court case against the state of South Carolina where she was seeking justice for her daughter who was mentally disabled, who was gang raped and got an STD. And when the state would not prosecute, she sued the adult care facility in which her daughter was supposed to be watched. I've interviewed her several times. I have her phone number. I know her personally. Now, you might be asking yourself, how does this 60-plus-year-old woman who bakes cookies end up becoming a fugitive? Well, you see, her daughter, Stephanie Bryant, she is mentally disabled. And according to Supreme Court documents from the state of South Carolina, she has the mindset of a 7 to 10-year-old.
Because it's all about the government controlling the person, taking the person for profit that they can make money off of through the state and federal dollars. When she was 2, she was diagnosed and with mental retardation. Now we call them special needs, but still she was delayed. In other words, at the age of about 20, Stephanie was on an 8-year-old level.
When Stephanie turned 18, officials from the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs, or DDSN, showed up to Stephanie's high school and essentially coerced her into signing herself into an adult care facility.
So I stayed at home, kept Stephanie, and about when she turned 17, her case manager began to tell me that she needed to go in a group home, that she would learn so much more and she would become more independent, and that it would, just be more suitable for her. And I said, no, Stephanie is fine at home. She is my child, and she will stay at home until I'm not able to take care of her. So the case manager, every time we had a meeting, she continued to bring that up. She would even talk to Stephanie about it. Well, eventually, I just adamantly said no. So Stephanie turned 18. She went to school one day. The class mother for her special needs class for 2 or 3 years. Stephanie didn't come home on the bus. She never came home. And I thought there was a bus accident, so I called the school, and they said, no, there was no report of an accident. I called her teacher, and I would learn that the case manager went to her school and had Stephanie to voluntarily sign herself in to the group home.
Wait, so let me make sure I understand, make sure I repeat this, because again, some people watching this may find this to be a little bit hard to believe, and you can't blame them, Brenda. This sounds outrageous. But basically, what you're saying is that a DDSN caseworker showed up to your daughter's special needs class with a binding legal document and got her to sign it.
Yes.
When you were her legal guardian.
I was not her guardian. I was her mother.
So basically, they saw it as, okay, this is a person who's just mentally disabled going to a high school, but we're not going to actually contact the mother before we get her to sign this.
That's correct. And in fact,
she had a job working as a dishwasher at Pizza Hut, something she loved and looked forward to. State was in control of my child. They got her Social Security check. They began to work her. They worked her on a county dump site, paying her like $1.35 an hour. working her about 40 hours a week. This went on from September until it took me 4 months to finally find out where my daughter was. We did not have the thousands. I went to see an attorney, and at that time, we are talking about 25 years ago, there was no way, the attorneys weren't even that familiar with special needs, the state agency for mentally challenged, and the guardianship issue for special needs. That was 25 years ago.
Once in that facility, Stephanie was gang raped and got an STD. When Brenda heard about this, she was obviously upset.
Stephanie was in the group home. Probably, she went in 93, so about 2 years, and we couldn't get her out. And so one morning, the staff member appeared at my house about 10 o'clock, and she said to me, Stephanie is missing. And I said, what? And she said, Stephanie's missing. We filed proper reports. Of course, you know, my worst nightmare as a mother. In all the time she had lived on, Stephanie had never once gotten away from me. My worst nightmare as a mother was the morning they come and told me my child was gone. 3 men picked her up, and they took her across town and gang raped her all night. The next day, she would be found. She was found the next day. And the agency, and I'm shortening this, but the agency told Stephanie not to tell me she had been raped. The administrators, there were several administration people and the staff, and when I was at the house and they had found her, they had talked with her before I was able to get to her, and they told her not to tell me. They weren't going to take her for a rape protocol.
I did that. I called the DDSN attorney, who then instructed Babcock Center that Stephanie was to be took to the hospital.
Let me pause it there. Let me pause it there. They didn't allow you, the mother of a rape victim, to see the rape victim.
Well, we went to the hospital, my husband and I. When we got there, the group home had gone in and informed the hospital that they personally had guardianship of Stephanie, and there was no guardianship. Therefore, that we were not allowed as her parents to see her.
That's correct.
And there was actually a rape kit done.
Yes, it was.
And the rape kit indicated signs of sexual assault, correct?
Definitely.
Because that's what you presented to the Supreme Court, who agreed that Stephanie was raped.
Correct.
So she went to the then Richland County, South Carolina, solicitor named Barney Geese. This man claimed that Stephanie Bryant, a woman with the mindset of a 7 to 10-year-old, was a, quote, fully competent mentally disabled woman, end quote. I remember that quote, and I remember when I first wrote your story, and I read what Greenville News put out and the Nerve with Rick Bergeret, and I read that quote. That Barney Geese actually said that the reason why Stephanie could not have been raped is because she was, quote, and I'm actually quoting him. He said that she was a fully competent, mentally disabled woman.
That's correct.
She brought the case before the South Carolina Supreme Court in a case that is named Madison Bryant v. Babcock Center. And the Babcock Center is a place where Stephanie Bryant was supposed to be watched and cared for. The reason why they called it Madison Bryant v. Babcock Center is because the name was changed to acknowledge that Stephanie Bryant was a victim of sexual assault. If you were to read the South Carolina Supreme Court documents, the Babcock Center claimed that they had, quote, no duty of care, end quote, because of a black and white view of either watching Stephanie all the time or none of the time. And that is despite the fact the Babcock Center and DDSN were receiving Stephanie's monthly Social Security benefits, meaning they were getting paid by South Carolina taxpayers, and on their watch, this woman was raped and got an STD.
No one told us that Stephanie had an STD, herpes. We finally got guardianship. I filed for guardianship and got her out of Babcock Center. And no one told us that Stephanie had the STD. They sent her back home to us, never telling us. It was not until I got her records from Babcock Center, for the attorney got her records, and we went through them, and it said sexually transmitted disease that Stephanie had gotten as a result of that rape that night.
Long story short, Brenda Bryant won the case in the South Carolina Supreme Court. And given what the Babcock Center and DDSN and South Carolina tried to claim, had Brenda Bryant lost that case, do you understand the implications of that? Okay, so what the Supreme Court said is that Stephanie was not competent enough to consent because she had the mindset of a 7 to 10-year-old. But this judge that came before the Supreme Court in a lower court, he claimed that she was mentally competent.
He put that in his order.
Then you told me that Judge Edward Sylvain, he presented a letter from DDSN stating that you should be removed as guardian, and this was during the Supreme Court case.
Now, the letter was sent while we were in the Supreme Court. It was sent by the Greenville Disability, where Stephanie was at. It was sent by their attorney.
Right.
But understand that DDSN and Greenville Disability are connected. DDSN funds the Greenville Disability.
Right.
And so that letter was sent during the course of the Supreme Court case. And so it was not presented, though, for 5 years. Judge Sylvain did not bring it up, didn't present it. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is this. He didn't care about Stephanie's welfare until there was $120-something thousand going into a trust account.
And the next thing you know, the probate judge says, I've got this letter. And he said, I'm concerned. I don't think that you might not have her best interest. I'm going to appoint my own guardian ad litem, which was Teresa Horton. Well, they had not bothered me until I went to set the trust fund up with Stephanie's money. Well, at the end of the year, the bill for the guardian ad litem and the guardians just happened to be, their bill just happened to be almost $115,000. Stephanie would have left Stephanie approximately $5,000 of her $120,000.
She found herself in courtroom after courtroom being charged legal fee after legal fee to the point where the money that she won from the Supreme Court case was all taken away by South Carolina courts through civil fees. And so when Brenda Bryant couldn't afford to pay, a bench warrant was issued. And so begins Brenda Bryant's long journey of injustice, of being persecuted, all because she has a history of going after the South Carolina government and winning.
The one thing that was being pushed by the agency at that time, they were asking legislators for respite money so that parents could have a break. And so, long story short, the legislators approved the respite money, and when they did, the state agency didn't assist the parents. I became the voice for the parents, and I confronted the state agency. I said, wait a minute, you've got money for respite, why? And then long story short, on that part, so I became, you might say, I began to question the state agency on our services. I believe that was the beginning at that time, because I was questioning how they were using the funds that were supposed to be appropriated for families to get them some respite relief.
And they want to silence her, because how do you explain someone who has a daughter who's been raped, gets an STD, the state refuses to prosecute? That state's own Supreme Court sides with this woman, and somehow she ends up becoming a fugitive. And when she became a fugitive, she was placed into the FBI's National Crime Information Center report listing. Sometimes this is called a NICS check. It's the same FBI check that you go through when you buy a firearm. This woman was placed into the NCIC as a violent offender, even though she had no violent offenses. And the way that I confirmed this, and the way that 18 publications from South Carolina confirmed this, was that she was picked up in Buncombe County in North Carolina. And both I and 18 other journalists called Buncombe County, and they confirmed that she was placed into the NCIC, which prompted Buncombe County at that time to call South Carolina and informed them to never place anyone else into the NCIC as a violent offender if they're not actually a violent offender. This woman is living in exile right now. She ain't been home in over 9 years. We have a pandemic going on right now, and her husband is a senior citizen who is 70 plus years old and has had 3 massive heart attacks. She has emailed judges and politicians to beg to come home to see her daughter, who is probably alone and confused and scared without her mother, who protected her throughout her life, and her husband, who could die at any point. And yet South Carolina has been so cruel, so vindictive, so disgusting, that this state persecuted Brenda Bryant for no other reason than she fought the power and won. And yet there are people out there with the nerve and the audacity to ask, why is there anger? This woman has my phone number. She calls me. She is alone, scared, and confused. And there are people out there, pieces of human garbage, who would have no empathy for that woman. Had Brenda Bryant lost that case, do you understand the implications of that? Her case has been used as a precedent as far as the U.S. Virgin Islands. If care facilities have no duty of care, as the Babcock Center tried to claim, that means that your loved one, should they be gang raped and get an STD, no one will be held accountable.